This is a true crime and horror genre channel. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. None of the actions discussed on this channel are condoned by the maker of the videos or by anyone involved. This channel is for education and entertainment only. Thank you.
Hello, my most beloved and murderous horde, and welcome back. I am your Mistress of Murder, and you all by now know my son Charlie. Say hello, Charlie.
As this channel has probably informed you by now, my horde, that the worst monsters are not the ones you find in the closet or under your bed. In fact, the worst of the worst are always human, always looking just like everyone else. And perhaps that is what makes them so horrifying, is that we know them. We know them as neighbors, as friends, as family sometimes. But my question and dilemma is much more complicated than this. How does one truly measure a monster? How do we name the best of the worst? Well, my horde, I have gathered for you a small list to maybe help you in this debate. Here are the top 10 worst in history. Shall we begin? You know the drill by now, my lovelies. Pick your poison. Sit back, relax, and let's have ourselves a little conversation. Number 10. King Leopold II, King of Belgium from 1865 to 1909. Leopold II is best known for ruling over the Congo Free State in Central Africa between the years of 1885 and 1908. Under his brutal rule in Africa, millions of Congolese people died. The death toll estimates are varied quite widely, and the true number will never be known for sure, but the low figures are still around 5 million, while the high figures sit at nearly 20 million. Leopold's aim was to extract rubber and ivory from the Congo region. To do so, he used forced Congolese labor that toiled under threat of horrific abuse from Leopold's army. The atrocities committed under his regime involved enslavement of the native population, torture, maiming, and full-out slaughter. One example is that Leopold II imposed quotas on every man in his realm for the production of raw materials. Men who failed to meet their ivory and gold quota even once would face mutilation, with hands and feet being the most popular sites for amputation. Now, if the man could not be caught, or if he needed both hands to work, the Leopold army would then cut off the hands of this man's wife or children. International pressure over reports of abuse that had leaked out finally forced Leopold to change some, but not all, of his policies in some of his land in 1908. Nevertheless, the Congo was still a Belgian colony, and widespread atrocities persisted until the country's independence in 1960, when civil war and atrocities of other varieties soon began. Number 9. Pol Pot. Born in 1925, Pol Pot became the leader of the Khmer Rouge Party and Prime Minister of Cambodia from 1976 to 1979. He had held the position in a de facto role since mid-1975, but after coming into power officially, he imposed a fierce agrarian policy that led to the demise of about 25% of the Cambodian population. Pol Pot formed a communist peasant farming society, where all of Cambodia's cities were forcibly vacated, and the 2 million residents were forced to live and work in the countryside. Citizens were forced into slave labor, work beginning at about 4 a.m. and lasting until about 10 p.m. overlooked by the Khmer Rouge soldiers. Aside from slave labor, the citizens had to endure malnutrition. Workers were permitted about 180-gram tin of rice every 2 days, poor medical care, and executions if there were any infractions. Worst of all, the Khmer Rouge committed mass executions and burials in killing fields, carried out using hammers, axe handles, spades, and sharpened bamboo sticks. The killings targeted all sorts of perceived threats and undesirables, including intellectuals, urban professionals, supposed foreign sympathizers, opponents of communism, and others. His regime came to an end in 1979 when the Vietnamese army invaded Cambodia and drove out Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. It is estimated that 2 million people died under his regime. Number 8. Ivan IV of Russia. Ivan IV of Russia, better known as Ivan the Terrible or Ivan the Awesome if literally translated, was the Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1547 and was the first Tsar of Russia from 1547 until his death in 1584. His lengthy reign was marked by the expansion of Russian borders and its progression from being a medieval state to a powerful empire. Now, Ivan actually had a peaceful reputation at the beginning, not receiving the more horrific background until much later. Now, unfortunately, this early benevolence was actually marked by a number of atrocities due to his quest for expansion and his tendency to control the population via strict military rule. In 1570, for example, Ivan was under the impression that the elite of the city of Novgorod planned to defect to Poland, and he led an army to stop them. His army subsequently built walls around the perimeter of the city to prevent escapees and rounded up civilians, torturing and killing between 500 and 1,000 of them in front of Ivan. In what may be an explanation for some of his actions as a bloodthirsty, paranoid ruler, Ivan supposedly suffered from mental illness. Such illness may or may not also explain his decision to beat his pregnant daughter-in-law for wearing what he considered immodest clothing, causing a miscarriage. When Ivan's son learned of his wife's miscarriage, he confronted his father and the two fought. Ivan ended up striking his own son in the head with a staff hard enough to kill him. Number 7. Elizabeth Bathory. A familiar name to this channel. Inspiration for the Countess Dracula and a woman deemed to be one of the most prolific serial killers of all time, long before the term was even coined. Elizabeth Bathory specialized in the grotesque and purely vile. Born in 1560, she served as a countess in the Kingdom of Hungary, but has since become known for her sadistic crimes. Though the number of her victims is heavily disputed, it is believed that she was responsible for torturing and killing hundreds of girls between 1585 and 1610. Her execution methods were incredibly disturbing, as she would torture the girls while naked, forcing them to eat their own flesh, stabbing them with needles, burning parts of their face or genitalia, and other bits of their flesh. Bathory would torture them for weeks on end, and many would starve or else be burned or frozen to death. It was also widely believed that she would bathe in their blood under the delusion that it would help her retain her youth. She was eventually caught in 1610, but her influence and power shielded her from any serious consequences, and she was simply forced to while away the remainder of her life in a set of small rooms while guards watched over her until her death in 1614. Number 6. Heinrich Himmler, Born in 1990, Heinrich Himmler was the second most powerful Nazi and possibly the most feared man in Nazi Germany. As the leader of the SS from 1929 to 1945, Himmler was responsible for conceiving and implementing the Holocaust. Himmler served as the head of the Unified Police Forces in Germany and also held command of the German concentration camps, organizing and ensuring the death trains ran on time and that the camps adhered to strict standards of murderous efficiency. His decisions and effort helped cause the death of some 11 million people, including Jewish, Polish, Russians, communists, and other groups deemed fit for death by the Nazis. As for his known personal cruelty amid the enormous wave of murder, it is said that Himmler's house contained furniture and books made from the bones and skins of his Jewish victims. He eventually committed suicide by poison in 1945 as the Nazi regime fell, and his comrades were being taken prisoner or executed. Number 5. Adolf Eichmann. Like Himmler, Nazi leader Adolf Eichmann was another of the Holocaust main orchestras. He was an instrumental part of the 1942 Wannenmies Conference at the Nazi leaders first coordinated on the plan for the Holocaust. Once things were in motion, Eichmann helped preside over the mass deportation of Jews into concentration camps, tirelessly working to organize the transportation, murder, and disposal of Holocaust victims, largely Jewish ones hailing from Eastern Europe. After the war, Eichmann eluded capture for roughly 15 years, but was eventually tried and hanged for his crimes in 1962. Showing neither hatred nor mental illness during his trial, Eichmann provided evidence that, according to Nazi hunters, you don't need to be sadistic or mentally ill to kill millions. A desire to do your duty will suffice. One of Eichmann's Nazi comrades once heard him say that he would leap laughing into his grave because the feeling that he had 5 million people on his conscience would be for him a source of extraordinary satisfaction. Number 4. Tomás de Torquemada. Tomás de Torquemada was the Grand Inquisitor of Spain and a central architect and perpetrator of the Spanish Inquisition starting in 1478. The Inquisition's tribunal was created by the Spanish monarchy to weed out anyone that they believed to pose a threat to the Roman Catholic Church in Spain. The Inquisition led to the death, torture, and rape of thousands, usually without evidence. The Torquemada would order Jewish and others perceived to be an anti-Catholic threat to be tortured or killed, inventing several specific torture techniques just for them. People were tortured by means of burning, suffocation, and starvation. More specific torture schemes included pulling a prisoner's arms and legs from their sockets, water being forced down the victim's throat, and cords tied around the victim to stop blood from flowing. The Torquemada is believed to have presided over the killings of thousands of people and to have helped cause the exile of 200,000 to 300,000 Jewish or Muslims who did not embrace Catholicism from Spain. After all his atrocities, the Torquemada died of old age in 1498. Number 3. Joseph Mengele. Known as the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele worked as a physician in the Nazis' Auschwitz concentration camp. It was there that he oversaw countless murders as well as cruel, disturbing experiments on the imprisoned. Mengele's most popular experiments were with twins, as he would pour chemicals into their eyes to see if they would change color, try to change their sex, and literally sew them together to see if he could create conjoined twins. He experimented on thousands of twins, and just a tiny fraction of them actually survived. The angel of death would sometimes force parents to kill their own children, torture children to see how long they would survive, and beat prisoners to death, or simply order them to the gas chambers by the thousands. After the war, Mengele was able to escape to South America with his family and died in Brazil after suffering a stroke while swimming in 1979. Number 2. Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler is one of the most infamously deranged dictators in human history. In large part, he is most known due to the iconic character he inspired, Count Dracula, and the vampire was even named after the 15th century prince of present-day Romania. But the truth is even stranger than fiction. After being kept in a tower for most of his childhood, imprisoned there by one of his father's enemies, Vlad decided to seek revenge. He then took power back from his oppressors and decided that anyone who crossed him would end up dead. To prove his point, Vlad hosted a dinner, to which he invited everyone who voiced opposition to him. As they arrived, he stabbed them all, impaling their still twitching bodies on spikes for all of the townspeople to see. Because the tactic was so effective at striking fear into the hearts of all his enemies, Vlad began using it on all who opposed him. Before long, the people began to call him Vlad the Impaler. And he certainly lived up to his name, impaling 20,000 of the 80,000 total people killed under his regime on spikes to send a message. Legend has it that he would even host dinner parties in a forest made of spikes, and the bodies impaled on them still dripping with blood. He ultimately died a bloody death himself while fighting against the Ottomans circa 1476-1477. And finally, number 1. Jim Jones. Though the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid" is used a little bit as a joke today to poke fun at someone who is buying into a scam or a group mentality, the origins of this phrase are actually quite sinister. In 1978, in Ganya, 900 people, 300 of them being children, drank cyanide-laced Kool-Aid and died at the behest of their cult leader, Jim Jones. Until September 11, 2001, the Jonestown Massacre, as it became to be known as, was considered the single largest deliberate loss of American civilian life in history. Jones had started his Jonestown colony in Ganya as a place for his People's Temple cult to escape what he perceived to be the stresses of modern American life. Often strung out on various drugs, Jones brought his isolated followers to his colony, where he continuously told them he could help them, all the while teaching them to fear the outside world. However, the People's Temple started falling when members of the U.S. government traveled to Ganya to help bring members of the cult home. However, Jones had instilled so much fear in his followers that they truly believed that the government officials that were truly there to help them were actually there to bring them to concentration camps or to kill them. Scared they would die as captives in the United States, they rallied together around Jones for support. But rather than helping them, he killed them all, lacing large batches of an off-brand Kool-Aid with cyanide, and encouraging them to feed it to their children before taking it themselves. That same day, he killed himself with a gunshot to the head. And that is all the time I have for you today, my lovelies. And remember, haunting dreams and blessed be.